Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, and you are listening and watching a brand new episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And joining me, as always, are my co-hosts Rebellious D and Trav.
What's up?
Hey, man, what's going on, brother? Good to see you.
I'm more than certain you said washing and not watching, but
No,
I hope he didn't say this guy. He messes up one word every intro.
No, I know. I said watching.
Washing.
I said
washing.
I think
Washington.
Hey, everybody, you're watching the new episode.
I think your hearing's off. That's what I think it is. And Trav, you have the ear, so
I was going to say
surprised.
I got the ear. It's never off, baby. It's never off.
But hey, joining us on today's episode is novelist Bradley Harper. How you doing today, Brad?
I'm just doing great, Benjamin. Thanks, guys, for having me on. You guys are a lot of fun.
That voice sounds familiar.
Oh yes,
well, hold on, Trav. Hold on, Trav. Because I was talking with D about this earlier, and you know, when I got the stuff in the mail, there was a letter from Santa. Because remember, we helped Santa save Christmas for
how could I forget?
For everybody in the world. We helped Santa,
yes,
and Santa he had a letter inside of the package that he sent to me, and it said, "Do not open this letter until the day before today." That's and right. When I opened up the letter, it said, "Bring on Bradley Harper and interview him about his books and whatnot." And I'm just like, okay. So I opened up the letter, and now we're interviewing Brad. So Brad, I would assume that you're good friends with Santa Claus, and that's the reason why he put that letter inside of the bag.
Oh yeah, Santa and I go way back, way back. I taught him how to make hot cocoa.
It was the best damn hot cocoa.
Yeah, it was the best hot cocoa. So before we get into this video review, well, not review, but interview, I'm sorry. We've been doing reviews all week. I'm sorry. But before we get into this video interview, make sure that you like this video, you hit the subscribe button, and you hit that bell button so that way you're always notified when we have new videos up here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. I'm just so used to doing video reviews now. And it's like sometimes I get the interviews and the reviews mixed up. It's like we've been doing.
Bro, we just washing right now. That's all we doing. We washing,
all we do.
baby. And we're
Trav, you beat me to it.
I don't get like how you heard washing when I said.
Bro,
washing.
See, you almost messed it up again. So
I said watching.
Mm-hmm.
We'll know for sure here soon.
Hey Trav, I know you're getting old, man. Maybe your hearing's starting to get off, bro.
No, sir. Look,
that's the only thing that I could think of.
Hey, take it easy. He's got the ear, bro.
Bro, exactly. And D, how many times has he denied that he did something, and then you and I got to be like, wait, we'll play
look
that.
at him. That's what same reason he sent us smiles.
Sweating right now.
Yeah, he is.
He's sweating. Look at him, and that ain't no smudge. That ain't no smudge.
Smudge.
It's like y'all just like to come after me because it's like y'all don't like y'all positions on the Banks train, and I get it.
We're not on a train.
I get it. Look,
there is no
cool.
train.
It's cool.
No train.
You know, everybody doesn't love where they are on the Banks train, but everybody likes trying the Banks train. So y'all just need to know y'all place, and y'all just need to
figment of your imagination.
Exactly. You ain't gonna Snowpiercer me, big boy.
Nah, hey,
that's right. That's right, Trav.
Hey,
Trav, you can't reference that.
Guys,
he hasn't seen
we have a guest on, and it's like y'all are bickering like little kids. Like, just chill.
Look, Bradley's family.
Just chill.
Hush. Haven't seen it all.
Brad, let's go ahead and get into it. This is what we do on every interview when we have a guest on. And I asked, what is your origin story? So let everybody that's watching and listening know what Bradley Harper's origin story is.
Oh, wow. Gee whiz. You guys didn't give any preparation for this. Okay.
We never do.
All right. Well, I went to this little Baptist college in Arkansas because they offered me a swimming scholarship. And my draft number was 84. So my choices were I swim in Arkansas or I wait in rice paddies, Vietnam. So I thought it took me like 0.2 of a second to make that choice. So anyway, I one day my dad says, son, your scholarship only pays, so much and I can't pay the rest. So you're going to have to join the Army. So I said, okay, thanks, Dad. So I took an ROTC scholarship. I went in the Army after my time in college, and I was going to be a high school Spanish and history teacher. And one day I go on sick call, and the doctor that sees me is such a jerk. I said in Spanish, they say un payaso, a clown. And so I call home, tell my wife, said, if that guy can make it to medical school, I think I can. So I did my 4 years. I got GI Bill out of it, so I went back 3 semesters, all the math, biology, and chemistry I could cram in my head. Got accepted to medical school at the military med school in Bethesda, Maryland. Came in the Army as a doctor. Did 37 years altogether.
Wow.
And, had a lot of fun. Yeah, 37 years, 4 months, and 9 days. Said I couldn't find honest work, so I just stayed in the Army. I love travel. I got command in Bosnia, in Fort Lee, in Puerto Rico, and in Vicenza, Italy. I had 7 years in Italy, mostly in Heidelberg, and the time in Vicenza. I was in Turkey for a year and a half, Puerto Rico for 15 months, traveled all over Central South America. At one point, I was the command surgeon for Army South, which is the Army part of Southern Command. And the FARC had a $1.5 million bounty on my head, alive, as a hostage. Whenever I tell anybody that, I always want to make sure before we part company, they understand that offer is no longer valid.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Wow. I was about to come up to you. I was like,
I'm
hey.
sorry?
I said I was about to come up there and get it, man.
See,
yeah, you can probably
exactly.
pick me up and carry me down to Columbia. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
This
anyway,
man
I
can't
did
be
my
trusted.
time, got out, and told my wife I'm never working another day in my life. So we traveled around a little bit, and after about 15 months, I said, this has been a lot of fun, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a buffet line on some cruise ship. I got to do something. So I had written a fan letter to this writer named Mary Roach. She writes a lot of nonfiction. And she wrote me back and said, "Oh, thank you very much." And I mentioned I was a retired Army pathologist. And she said, "Do you have any ideas for my next book?" And so I said, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I know a lot of people in the research community in the military." So one thing led to another. She wrote a book called Grunt. And I, took her around, introduced her to a lot of people, got her, in the community. And so she wrote a really nice acknowledgement, saying what I had done for her. And I looked at how she took the information and made a book out of it. Said, I could do that. So I had this idea for some time about involving Arthur Conan Doyle in the hunt for Jack the Ripper, but I never really thought, I'm not a writer. But I said, well, I saw her do it. I said, okay, it ain't easy, but she's a mere mortal. She's not, a superhuman being. I said, well, maybe what's the worst that could happen is my grammar would improve. So I started cranking this out. I worked on it for about 2 years, and it was still terrible, but it was better than the beginning. Yeah, exactly. And I found a guy who coached writers, and he helped me get along further. And I queried 79 agents. They all turned me down. A couple wanted, asked for partial manuscript and were encouraging, but finally said, no, this isn't what I'm looking for. So I finally went to a writers conference, and they had a couple agents there. And long story short, one of them gave me a shot, made some suggestions. I listened to her. I made the changes. She liked it so much, she signed me on. So she puts the book out to bid, and 5 publishers jump on it. They're all interested in the story. And one says, well, what's his second book? And so I didn't have an idea. I kind of had an idea for a second book, maybe. I mean, hell, I just wrote one. God.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I kind of have an idea. And so 45 minutes, I made up this, can I say bullshit?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, you already said it.
Kind of bullshit idea. I says, well, I think this is what the book is going to be about. And so I sent them the synopsis that I wrote in 45 minutes. The acquiring editor liked that as well. So he offered me a 2-book deal. And it was pretty sweet, I must admit, for a guy who never published anything before. So my agent, liked it so much, she did what they call a preempt. It was supposed to be out for 4 weeks. We got this great deal in 2.5. And with my permission, we shut it off, and we took the 2-book deal. The first book, to my surprise, was a finalist for the Edgar Award for Best First Novel by an American. It won the Silver Falchion Award at Killer Nashville for Best Mystery. And the second book that I just kind of on the fly thought of an idea won the Silver Falchion the next year for Best Suspense and Book of the Year.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So,
yeah, that's
nice.
I love
that's
that.
awesome, man. It's
that's
always
bad.
a good feeling when you start like your path in something that you want to do and you win an award for it. Because I know when I got into professional wrestling, my first year in, I had won 3 awards. it was two award shows for the here in the area, and I had won best newcomer of the year and best student of the year at the other place. And it was just awesome because it's like when you step your foot into something that you want to do, you don't expect that you're going to win awards and stuff like that because you feel like that you may not be good enough or you may feel that it's just like you're just okay. But when you get those votes, like it's definitely like a good pat on the back because it's like it's something that you don't expect. But I will say that, when some people win awards and whatnot, it can kind of go to their heads and then they get the egos and whatnot. But Brad, you're a good person. And it's just like, that's just how it is.
Hey, sometimes you win.
Be humble.
Well, thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
I think too. Real quick, Mr. Brad. Sure. I think that another thing is to do it for the right reasons. Whenever you do it, like you're passionate about what you wrote. Well, at least the first novel.
Oh yeah.
And And I think that's a big part of why you succeeded, man.
Absolutely.
Congrats, kudos.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
And of course, you're also talking to award winner. I did win best group in Virginia for my old group back in the day. So,
nice.
I had that award on the wall.
Yeah.
And we're all award winners here.
And I won Leveling Up's best looking award.
Yeah,
so here I am.
And that was pretty tough competition too.
Yeah, it's pretty stiff in here.
Hey.
Yeah.
Banks? No, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Okay, so people ask me, do I get nervous? And I said, not really. I dabble in philosophy and in Buddhism, they really talk about focus on the process and the outcome will take care of itself,
Mm-hmm.
So all I do is, and like you said, I love telling a good story.
Yep.
And initially I was having trouble with the mechanics of writing a book. I said, I'm writing a book. And I was really struggling. And one day I realized I'm not writing a book. I'm telling a story. I'm telling it through a book. But if I focus on the story, not the mechanics of the chapter length or whatever.
Exactly.
Then that'll take care of itself over time.
Yep.
And
exactly.
So the first book took me 3 years. The second book, I had the first draft done in 6 weeks.
Nice.
Wow. Nice. Now
I wanted to wrote about 6 more times, but I had a good solid first draft in 6 weeks.
Nice.
So I wanted to talk about A Knife in the Fog because I love the story that's being told in it where you have author Conan Doyle and he encounters Jack the Ripper. And I always feel like, now let me ask you this. Do you watch anime by any chance, Brad?
Oh, yeah. So my daughters kind of made me do that when they were growing up. So I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Have you ever heard of this anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Thank God.
In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I'm a JoJo nerd. I talk about it on almost every episode and review. Jack the Ripper, he makes an appearance up there, and I always feel like it's very interesting where you see Jack the Ripper in like certain shows and certain animes, and how people deal with him. You know what I'm saying? So I thought it was cool that you went with this route with your book, A Knife in the Fog, where it's like at first it's like I thought it was Sherlock Holmes, but this it's the author of Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle, and he goes to London and he encounters Jack the Ripper. So like, what was the thought process of coming up with this story?
Well, I started reading Sherlock Holmes at the age of 13. I lived on the edge of town in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was always a real, book nerd. I always had a book in my hand. So the summertime when school was out, I couldn't get to the school library. So there's a bookmobile that parked on the edge of town.
I remember those.
One day a week. So I get on my bicycle with the big wire basket in front, and I'd ride the 5 miles to the bookmobile. Wow. And I could only check out 4 books a week. So one day I'm at the bookmobile, and there's this really thick book, and it's the entire canon of Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
I said, well, that should last me more than a day. Well, it took me 2 weeks. I read the entire canon in one big gulp in 2 weeks, and I cried when I read the last story because that was the last story. There weren't any more. And then 73, when I was in college, just about the time I graduated, Nicholas Meyer wrote the 7% Solution, which was a Sherlock Holmes story where he works with Sigmund Freud to overcome his opium addiction. And again, just blew me away. And that's the first time I thought, wow, somebody besides Conan Doyle can write a Sherlock Holmes story. Turned out a lot of people have, but I mean, that was the first one that I was aware of. Yeah. So anyway, after retired, one day I'm in Wikipedia, which is my holy sacrament, and I read that there was a 4-year gap between the first Holmes story, Study in Scarlet, written in 1886, came out in 87, and the second story was The Sign of Four in 1890. So there was a 4-year gap between when he wrote it, and 3-year gap from publication to publication. And in the middle of that was Jack the Ripper. And anyway, when Doyle wrote the first story, he only got £25, which is less than he would get for a short story he wrote for boys magazines, and they demanded he give up full copyright. And this is after like 6 months of going to all these different publishers. All said, this stinks, this is ridiculous, we don't want it. And this one publisher only bought it because his wife said, oh, this is a good story, you should buy it. So just to make her happy, he gave Doyle an insultingly low price, hoping he would turn him down. But Doyle was tired of it by the time he just sold it for whatever the guy would pay him, and said, well, that was a waste of time. I'll never write another crime story. And he turned to historical fiction. So I thought of involving Doyle in the hunt for Jack the Ripper to explain why, based on his experiences, why Doyle would return to writing about the great detective, and why the Ripper suddenly started and suddenly stopped without knowingly being caught. So that was my whole concept of the story, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew. I thought, as you know, one of my major characters is Margaret Harkness. She was a real person. She was a suffragette, and she was a social reformer, and she wrote about the working poor of London. And at one point during the Ripper murders, she was living in Whitechapel where the murders happened, because she wrote about the working poor, and she wanted to live like her characters. So I thought I would involve her as a minor character to serve as Doyle's initial guide, and to kind of show the status of women at the time, because she primarily published in the name of John Law, because she could barely give her books away with her own, female name. Yeah. So she published mostly under John Law. So I thought, I'll stick her in there. And something happened when I put her on the page. They talk about the characters taking over, but she has this voice. And finally, when it was all said and done, I looked at that. And the third character I have, major character, is Professor Joseph Bell, who was Doyle's professor of surgery when he was a medical student. And in fact, Bell was the inspiration for the character of Sherlock Holmes. And in real life, Bell was involved in some forensic investigations. So afterwards, it was all said and done, I realized I'd taken Bell, Doyle, and Margaret, and I'd given each of them one aspect of the human personality. Doyle is pure ego. Ego meaning, it's like a 5-year-old. The world has certain rules. The peas don't touch the carrots. You eat things in a certain way, and that's just how the world works. Bell is super ego. Yeah, he understands there's a need for rules, but he can also stand back and see the larger picture. It says sometimes to fulfill a great cause, you've got to bend the rules a little bit. And then there's Margaret, who's pure id. She says what she thinks as soon as she thinks it. And was the kind of person we all admire, but we have to have 2 or 3 stiff drinks before we can, emulate her convincingly. So I found that the 3 of them together, really, I had something that was greater than the sum of its parts. And they call themselves the 3 Musketeers. And in my second book, I have Margaret as the main character. Bell is in the early part of the story, and Doyle makes one appearance. And my harshest criticisms have been people who said, I really miss the interplay of those 3 characters that were present in the first book. And I really kind of I enjoyed writing their dialogue. Usually in dialogue, you have 2 people talking to each other. I would have frequently had the 3 of them going back and forth and juggling those 3 dialogues. So each person is meaningfully involved, and there's some conflict, and yet they're all working together for a larger purpose.
Kind of like us.
Yeah, exactly. So it was good for me, and the readers enjoyed that tension as well. So the first book did well. I get great reviews on the second also, not as many, but like I said, it won that award. So that tells me that when people are forced to read the book, they actually like it.
Yeah. So with that being said, because you said how you had people who love the dynamic of the 3 characters going back and forth, is there a possibility that we might see a third book? And if there is a third book, are you gonna make it like how you want to do it and not what's the word, Trav, when you give people what they want?
Fan service.
There we go. Thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
you
Yeah, because I feel like in certain animes, like a popular one is Dragon Ball Super. It's just like that anime, like we grew up watching it, so we loved it, but it's so much fan service in it that it kind of takes away from what Dragon Ball was known for. So, you know, is there a possibility that there might be a third book, and would you go with putting fan service in that book?
Well, I was working on a third book with them, and unfortunately, because the low sales of the second book, the first book did pretty well. The second book, although it's critically rated to be even better than the first, hasn't really caught on. I think just the subject matter. I have Margaret trying to stop an assassination of Queen Victoria during her Diamond Jubilee. There was a book that came out also in 1973 by a guy named Frederick Forsyth called The Day of the Jackal. And it's about a professional hitman who's hired to assassinate Charles de Gaulle. And so I kind of took that, put it in the Victorian era, but in my case, my assassin or my wannabe assassin is a pretty common guy who's being pressured by the anarchist to do something he wouldn't ordinarily do. And I wanted my reader to be sympathetic for the guy. Don't want him to succeed, but you kind of feel sympathetic as you know that he's basically a decent guy who wouldn't do this unless he felt it was, you know, he didn't have any choice. So just didn't catch. My publisher dropped me, and so my agent said that other publishers will not pick up a series that's been dropped by someone else. So I was working on a third book in the series. Arthur Conan Doyle had a cousin who was a member of the Knights of St. Patrick, which was an order of knights in Ireland, and he was the Ulster King of Arms. His job was to protect the Irish crown jewels in a tower in Dublin Castle. The jewels were stolen under his watch. The jewels were never recovered, and at one point, Doyle offered to help to try to recover the jewels. As you may know, he was involved in a couple of real-life detective cases. Well, his offer was turned down, but of course, in my story, his offer would be accepted, and Belle and Margaret would join him. The major suspect in the case, and who I think probably had a hand in it, was a guy. He was I forget his name now. The last name was Shackelford. He was a younger brother of Ernest Shackelford, who led the Antarctic expedition on the ship Endurance. And but the younger brother was kind of a con man. Later in life, he cheated a lot of he was a financial advisor and embezzled a lot of money from his clients. And so he had access to the jewels because he was made a herald of the Knights of St. Patrick. So he had access to them, and he's probably the guy that did it. But because he was involved with some illicit dealings with the brother-in-law of King Edward, it was probably never taken to court. In fact, King Edward sent his personal representative from Scotland Yard over there to oversee the investigation. This inspector wrote a report. One copy went to the Royal Irish Constabulary in Dublin, the other to Scotland Yard. 2 years afterwards, both copies were moved in the archives and never seen again.
Man, I love how much knowledge you know.
Yeah. I have a couple questions too, Bradley. Have you been to Britain?
Oh yeah.
Have you actually been to where the Jack the Ripper stuff and all that stuff originated? Obviously. I mean, I don't want to assume anything because you know what they say about assuming.
I do indeed. Okay, on the first question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I found a gentleman. Well, my daughter is a librarian, so I asked her to give me some good resources on the Ripper, and she got me this really good book. And not only talked about the Ripper murders, but the society of the time and the impact the Ripper murders had. I make allusions. There was a lot of anti-Semitism, and that inflamed, which was inflamed by the Ripper murders. The journalist at the time there was one man they suspected, and they stressed how Jewish looking or Hebrew looking he looked, and that there was concern there'd be riots in Whitechapel against the Jews who recently come over from Central Europe to escape persecution.
And Interesting.
So anyway, so I wrote this guy
Yep.
back and forth a couple of times for questions. He does walking tours of Whitechapel. So I went to
Nice.
London. I bought out his tour. So for 4 hours, it's just him and me walking through Whitechapel at night. And even now with electric light, I can tell you those little narrow alleyways and
Yeah.
are pretty spooky at nighttime when the dim lights. So just imagine what it was like when they had gaslight there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When electricity first came to London, Queen Victoria insisted that Whitechapel be one of the first areas to be electrified because of the high crime rate that they had there.
Right.
Yep. And
Crazy
then,
stuff.
yeah, you got to think about too the atmosphere of Britain, how it's always known for being kind of damp all the time, rainy all the time, and then you get the fog. I mean, it's very interesting.
Well, indeed, that's the reason why, you know, Phantom Blood, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it was set in Britain. You know, and vampires and all that stuff. Like whenever I think of like, you know, Britain, I always think of like vampires, Jack the Ripper, Sherlock Holmes.
Of course.
It's like how you said, where it's just like the whole dark atmosphere that they have
set.
there, you know, especially in those times too. I mean, because didn't you have what was it? Batman something
Gaslight by Gotham.
Yeah, and like
Gotham by Gaslight. Right?
Yeah, and like Jack the Ripper was
Gaslight by Gotham.
Is it Gaslight? Okay. Yep.
But it's like Jack the Ripper was the killer in that as well. So it's like, you know, just that whole aesthetic that you know, and the atmosphere and everything.
I was about to say Jack the Ripper. He kind of was the killer, but you know, remember
I didn't want to spoil it.
I mean, dude, again, that comic came out in the 80s.
It doesn't matter though.
It does matter. It
doesn't matter.
He says 2020.
Hey, but some people. Hey, look, I just watched Lost Boys last year, man.
Yeah. See,
but sir, that's on you.
That's a great movie.
It's on you.
You heard, Brad.
That's one of my favorite lines.
Because Trav, I've known you now since. Well,
look at this guy.
Technically, it's on D because I've known D longer. I've known
he's
D
rambling.
You, so D, it's like you should have introduced me to that movie.
If I had known you were starving for movies, I would have helped.
I know.
It's like we used to work together. You know,
one of my favorite lines in that movie is "Death by Stereo."
Right.
Death by Stereo.
It's a good. I really
that's
want to
watch cult classic.
I want to watch the sequels, but everybody's told me not to.
I wouldn't.
Garbage.
But you know, going back to Doyle for just
a minute. Yes.
We snowball up here.
Times, you know, all the writers, they knew each other, and in fact, Conan Doyle, Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, and Barry, who wrote Peter Pan, they were all the same football team at the same time.
What?
Oh wow!
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's wild.
It was the goalie, and his professional football name was A.C. Smith. Arthur.
No, I thought you was about to say A.C. Slade.
No, but the three of them, they were on a soccer team together.
That's
a professional soccer team.
That is an amazing story to hear. Thank you,
dude. I know, just like a random nugget of.
Yeah, man, that is one heck of a nugget. Wow.
Well, you know how Doyle got back to writing Holmes. Okay, so he wrote the story 4 years ago. And was disgusted, and so 1890, he and this Irish poet you may have heard of called Oscar Wilde. They're both invited to dinner by this American magazine publisher named Stoddard. He had a magazine called the Lippincott Monthly. He invited them both to dinner at his hotel in London and offered them each a £100 check if they would write something for his magazines. Well, Doyle returned to writing Sherlock Holmes, and Oscar Wilde wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Wow.
Nice.
And if he hadn't had that dinner, Holmes would have stopped with one story, and The Picture of Dorian Gray would never have been written.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you too, Bradley, while we're talking about kind of classics. What do you know about like the stories of like Alan Quatermain?
Quatermain,
Did he actually have books just about that character, like Alan Quatermain, and like was he an adventurer, or do you know anything about that?
I do know that Doyle wrote Professor Challenger.
Who
was an adventurer.
Okay.
And he also had this French Brigadier Gerard.
Yep.
So he did write some other storylines that continuing characters. I've seen the movies Quatermain.
Yeah.
I don't know for a fact. I mean, you could prove me wrong. I do not know who the author was for the Quatermain.
Well, I was just curious because I like, you know, I'm a horror movie guy, and I looked at stuff like The Blob and all those older books. And I saw that they have books on Quartermain, like from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, that's a great movie. I love
Yeah,
it.
and
It is
apparently
underrated.
I went to look because they have like the Invisible Man in the movie and
Yep.
things like that. And apparently there's a book about him. I've never looked any further into it, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, there's a Quartermain story about King Solomon's mines.
Okay.
I read that a long time ago
Okay.
when I was a lot younger than you are, which was a long time ago. So I do remember reading that as a kid, in my teenage years, but I do not for the life of me remember who the author was.
Well, I can ask you this since you brought him up. The picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
Who painted the picture? It's a painting of him, right? And if he sees it, he'll
Michael.
crumble.
Right. Well, okay. The story that Oscar wrote, I believe, I read again. I read this a long time ago.
Right.
If I remember correctly, he paints it himself and then hides it away. Basically, he puts all his human frailty into the painting.
Okay. So
he
it was him.
always looks, pristine and pure, and all his faults, all his vices are transferred magically to this painting.
Pretty sick.
Nice.
Yep. Sick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Trav, did you have another question about the first two books? Because I have one about Gallery of Death.
Yeah. So, going back to A Knife in the Fog, just because I love how like you take real stuff, but like play fiction with it.
Yeah.
And but you have to know a lot of. Obviously, you do. Just from the explanations that you've been giving us, but you have to know a lot of details from back then, in order to paint these picture with actual people, but in a fictional fairy tale.
Yeah, one of the nicest compliments I've gotten is that the atmosphere or London of 1888 became like another character. Whitechapel was like another character in the story.
Right. It's just spooky times. You know what I mean? Like, it always seems like it's foggy. It's nighttime.
Like Gotham City.
Yeah. The table set.
This is scary because it's like you're walking across like the brick walkways. And like, man, I remember one time I got lost in Williamsburg. And
that can be scary.
And it was foggy. And I went down.
And you saw the trench coat?
No, the road that I went down, it was just a long road, but it was bricks on the road.
Yeah.
You know what else is like that?
See that, bro?
Yeah, because you might have been in a historical district.
I was, but I didn't know. Yeah. And all the trees are dead.
Well,
foggy. It's cold, and I'm like, bro, turn around like now and get us out of here,
bro. Pungo was like that too. Like the first time I had ever went out there because I got lost. And I was just like, man, I didn't know that there was a country part of Virginia Beach. And I was getting scared because it was dark out there. I had Jamel with me. Me and Jamel, we were out there.
Oh, man.
And Jamel was like, he was just like, yeah, man, I think you should turn around. I think you don't want to keep going any further down this road.
Nope. If you don't see something, you might want to turn back. And that's what I meant too about like being like Britain itself. It's very, and then you have to think about the times, how they communicated. It's so like old. The table was set for him, Jack the Ripper himself, to do whatever he wanted, really. Yeah, and I mean, it was just the right time for him to do those. I mean, it was heinous, but there was no way to catch him. You know what I'm saying? Like Bradley was saying, all those back alleyways and stuff. It's creepy to
especially
think about,
if you know all the I mean, because look at.
I mean, even now we have cell phones, and somebody can still get you.
But like D, look at me and you, for example, because we're drivers. Yeah, and like look at all the back roads that we know and everything that. You know what I'm saying? So like with Jack the Ripper, it's like he could be studying everything during the day. I can go this way, I can go that way.
Well, he didn't drive.
No, that's the thing. Like he was there.
Though. You know what I mean? It's
he knows all the back cuts, literally.
That's what makes it even scarier. It's just walking.
Yeah, exactly. And you have no way. Jason. It's just interesting to think about it. Bringing him up and. There was no way to ask for help or anything, and then they said that he would go after what were they, hookers? Prostitutes.
But But here's the thing. This is why people continue to put Jack the Ripper in their stories.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever seen a supernatural show, and I don't mean Supernatural the series. I just mean any show that deals with ghosts or vampires or anything where Jack the Ripper does not make an appearance.
Yeah, or somebody similar.
Or they'll have the ghost of Jack the Ripper come back or something, and it's like, and it's because still to this day.
You know, that's similar to, I believe it was the Axeman on American Horror Story, Coven.
Oh man, I don't remember.
I'm thinking.
You don't remember that? Remember the Axeman?
Oh, yeah, Axeman, I know is on History Channel.
No. Remember, like he was a murderer, but he was a jazz musician. And then, like after he would get done playing his saxophone, he would follow women and he would kill them. You know, like, bro, I thought Coven was one of your favorite seasons of American Horror Story.
I don't think that was on Coven, bro.
Yeah, it was on Coven with the witches. And remember, I can't remember the main witch's name, but
what's this guy do with Jack the Ripper?
Yeah, Bradley, this is what he does. He ran.
No, it's like how don't you notice? Like you were watching American Horror Story before me. Like how don't you remember this stuff? How don't you remember this stuff, Trav? Come on.
This has
Bradley,
to do with Jack the Ripper.
I do have a question for you.
Because the character is similar to Jack.
Let's let him. This guy do. Okay, there we go. Bradley, we're catching a breath. Let me get this out. Is Watson in the original Sherlock Holmes? At what point does he plop up, or is he just somebody that Holmes knows in the original stuff, like a doctor that he asks, or
in the very first Holmes story?
Yeah,
Study in Scarlet. Watson was wounded. He was an army surgeon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so okay.
And he comes back to London, and his disability pay is about to run out. He needs a cheap place to stay. And so this guy he knows says, "Oh, I know somebody else who's looking for a roommate, basically someone else he can share a flat with." So he takes them down and finds Holmes is down there beating up corpses to see how long after death can you still create bruises. And
interesting.
So introduction to Holmes, and Holmes says, "Oh, I see you recently returned from Afghanistan." You know, he can tell, you know, by the guy's his sunburned visage and stuff, and so they Watson's kind of like, you know, who is this guy? You know, it's not the best introduction, but he's kind of hard up. He didn't have a whole lot of money, and Holmes offers to share the flat. He looked at the flat. Well, this doesn't look so bad, and so that's how So it's in the very first story from the very beginning. We actually, I like that from Watson's point of view first, and then he meets Holmes.
Nice, right. That's interesting. I always wondered, and I mean, since we have you here, you know, you're fully versed in it, so I figured I'd ask. Yep. Thank you again. Thanks.
Yeah, so I wanted to move along to Gallery of Death, and with this one, you took 4 stories and you put them in this book. Like, what were the inspiration for some of the stories? Because I read the description for some of them, and like they're really interesting.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you know, after I decided I was going to start writing, and this is actually after I'd already sold the 2 books, I said, you know, maybe I should get some formal training in how to do this, because I think I might want to do some more. So I got an associate's degree in creative writing online through Full Sail University. Great professors. I was the only guy in my program who wanted to write novels. Everybody else wanted to write games.
That's the school I went to too. After I left TCC, I went down there and got my music degree.
Yeah, great school. So anyway, assignments I got in my courses, I had to write on different themes. And I noticed that, you know, maybe because I was a pathologist in the Army, but all of them had some relationship one way or the other to death, or near death. And so I came with the idea Gallery of Death. We had to self-publish one ebook as our final project to graduate. And I graduated top of my class. We call it magna cum laude, or I forget.
Sounds right.
Top of my class, but don't get too impressed. There were 3 of us. So everybody else went on to get bachelor's degrees. I stopped at the associates, but I am going on to get a master's, an MFA through Seton Hill, and part of that there's an optional 1 year abroad. So in September, I'll start a master's of arts and creative writing at Napier University in Edinburgh, Scotland. I'll be living in Scotland for 1 year.
Sick.
Right away. In fact, my wife, my wife's new video game is looking at apartments for let in Edinburgh, and she found a house for sale that in 1882 had a young medical student who lived in it named Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
That's wild.
A
Wow.
little bit out of my
Big.
price range, but it was still pretty cool. If it was for rent, I would have definitely found the ducats to make that happen.
Wow.
The
That's wild.
ducats.
The dockets. You heard the man. You heard him.
Nah, man, that you'll definitely have to come on and Zoom with us again from Scotland.
Nah.
All right.
That would be amazing.
Guys.
Thanks.
I thought you was gonna follow it up with
Oh,
something.
bro, I got hey, this is my neck of the woods. I mean, it's just fun having a novelist who's well versed in, Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. Isn't this fun? I mean,
Thank you.
I could ramble off questions. I mean,
There's something called the halo effect. And you mentioned what I try to do is stay as close to the actual events and people as possible.
Mhm.
So someone who reads it, who knows the history, say, well, it could have happened like this.
Right.
Yeah.
But the halo effect is if I tell you 3 or 4 things that are absolutely true, and I tell you a 5th thing that's sort of true and sort of not, my little playing with the truth, you're going to tend to believe it because up until now, I've been telling you just as it was. So
Right.
Yeah.
that halo effect. But one of the interesting things I found when I was doing the research was that I was watching a TV program called Murder Maps, and it talked about other crimes that happened around the time of Jack the Ripper. And it mentioned that in the 1890 census of London, or of England, if you lived in a small country village outside of London, the population density was about 25 people per acre.
Mhm.
If you lived in the West End of London, where the rich people lived, it was 50 people per acre. If you lived in Whitechapel, the population density was like 850 people per acre.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's like a giant anthill.
Right.
Yep.
And for the Ripper to be able to walk along those courtyards and alleyways and kill people at random, at will without being caught, that to me, it just heightened the supernatural
Yeah.
skill factor of how he could walk through this teeming humanity and take lives brutally at random.
Yeah. It's just,
Interesting.
it's crazy. I mean, just talking about him as a real person and stuff, to me, the more I now that we're actually talking about it, it seems to me like he had to be like a butcher or something. He had to have had something that would make you travel around the city over and over and over again. I don't feel like he was a stationary job. It's just like Sweeney Todd, for example. The story, it's like he was in one place and he was just picking people off.
Right.
But it was like Jack the Ripper had to have he could have been the paper boy. Who knows?
Right. Here's the
I
crazy.
mean,
Here's the
yeah.
crazy thing, though. No, we're never gonna know. So
Yeah.
I
you
know.
could just
Spooky.
ramble off. He could have done this. He could have done
Yeah,
this.
it's just fun to think about.
Dude, it's
you know?
crazy to think about. It's
Yeah.
scary.
Now, Bradley, I just like this where this is right now. How many murders did he commit? Was there a number?
We know for sure that there were 5.
Okay.
They're called the canonical victims. Everyone agrees. The same technique. I think there was a 6th person.
Yeah.
Her name was Martha Tabram, and she was murdered about 3 weeks before the first one that everyone agrees on.
Yeah.
And I think the Ripper killed her before he really had refined his technique.
That's
Yeah.
She
wild.
was stabbed multiple times, and her throat was slit. But I think it was like a frenzy, and I think he kind of lost his nerve at one point. And so, but everyone agrees about the 5.
Yeah.
And it's my theory that Martha was like his first case.
Yeah.
And he was learning, but that's just conjecture on my part.
Yep.
Mhm.
Now,
What-
yeah, go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead,
gonna
Yeah.
say, what is your theories on why it stopped?
Well, there are theories that he moved on to other countries. There were
Right.
similar killings in Germany and in the United States. Some think he was a sailor.
Yeah.
So he killed when his ship was in port and then would go away and then come back. Some think that there's
Damn,
one
that's a good
suspect-
thought.
Yeah, there was one suspect that people quote, who was a Polish artist who was consigned to an insane asylum for the rest of his life. And some people think, and then the murder stopped after that. There were no further after his confinement. Some people think, and his paintings were very grotesque. And so that's another possibility. But when people ask me who I think the Ripper was or why they stopped, my answer is mystery sells books.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a damn good answer.
People want to know because I mean, before we even had this conversation, like it's like I know who Jack the Ripper is, but you know, I'm just finding out like that he never, like nobody knows who he really was.
Nope.
You know, it's always been a mystery because isn't it the same thing for the Zodiac Killer as well?
I was gonna say, it's like that for the Zodiac Killer too.
So who are some other killers that are like nobody never found out who they were besides Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer? Does anybody know?
The Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper. What's the name of that one movie that's based on a shooting? The Town That Dread Sundown. That's another person. They didn't find him either. I don't think they caught him. What was it? I think it was like in the course of like a week or a weekend. Guy was killing people, and I don't think they caught him either. They had speculations around people in the town who they thought was doing it, obviously, but they never caught that person either.
Well, this brings me to my next question then,
Go ahead.
Bradley. Is it the mystery? Is it like killer mysteries that you're really into? Or is Jack the Ripper just kind of your thing only because you grew up reading Sherlock and the time era and like that particular time era and location so happens to be of interest to you?
Okay, I'm a novelist.
Right.
I tell lies, but I use my lies to reveal truths. And my focus in the story, I wanted to be very careful not to make the Ripper to be any way, shape, or form to titillate. He did terrible things, and I introduced the reader to one of his victims before she's killed, so that her death really has meaning when it happens. I didn't want his victims to be props to make this guy famous. Every story, every good story, there's the superficial story. I tell about how Doyle and Belle and Margaret, deal with the challenges of determining who Jack the Ripper is and bringing him to some form of justice. There was of course, the subtext is that Doyle he was a middle-class guy. He came from a poor family, in fact, but then worked his way up to be respectable middle class. And he had never had any dealing with the poor of Whitechapel, that social class. And I think people, they say there's no saint like an old sinner. So people who've risen up from poverty oftentimes shun people from that class. The fear that, I could become like them again. I was like them once, I would be like them again. I wanted to use this experience to let him grow to have sympathy for the working poor, even for the prostitutes. These are women who were doing the best they could to try to make it through life. And in fact, after one is killed, her body's being removed. And one of the things I learned on my walking tour with this Ripper's expert was that when Mary Kelly, she was the fifth victim that we all agree on, as her body was discovered, the Lord Mayor of London was being installed about a mile and a half away at the most. And news to the crowd spread that another Ripper victim had been found. So thousands of people in their Sunday best left this ceremony to go and stand there and witness this poor woman being brought out of this apartment in a simple wooden box. Some sort of gory entertainment, I guess. Sort of like people who drive by, accidents.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had Belle, who's the least emotional, do kind of a eulogy for Mary, because they'd met and he was very impressed with her spirit. And he recites the poem Invictus. And while he's doing that, I contrast all these people standing there silent in this courtyard as their bodies coming out with the ceremony about a mile and a quarter away of the Lord Mayor and his ermine-lined robes and his chain of office being installed, and all the pomp and circumstance, and there's total silence in the courtyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that stuff's wild. I mean, it's just fun to talk. I mean, you're knowledgeable, and it's just it's just fun for you to let us pick your brain, man.
If anybody listening or watching right now doesn't want to order this book,
yeah, man,
immediately, just based off of
the knowledge,
the
alone.
lore around what what I mean, not even necessarily the book itself that we really haven't talked too much about. And it's really mostly been the lore and the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the thing, Banks. Not giving anything away. But if you think about the story and Bradley using Jack the Ripper as his main antagonist, I'll say, it's fun because it was never solved.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's probably the most well-known unsolved mystery. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's very fun.
Yeah,
at least you know.
Huh?
Yeah, I make mention that at one point because the telegraph was still a fairly recent invention.
Right.
And as far as I know, the Ripper murders were their very first crimes that were followed in almost real time around the world.
Right.
You have this small neighborhood in
I never
London,
knew that.
and people all around the world are reading the most recent reports of the victims and police investigation, everything going on. And so I have Doyle mentioned in the story, he goes to America sometime later, which he did at least 3 times I know of, and how surprised he was at how much the Americans knew about the Ripper murders.
Right.
That, you know, it's a little local thing here, but it was followed real time everywhere.
And that's pretty interesting when you think about it, because imagine being in America at that time period and hearing these stories of what's going on in Britain and wondering if something similar could happen here, because of course people, it's like, they start getting paranoid and whatnot. It's just like, because like when you're a kid, right, you joke around and you make up these like these silly games, like what's the Bloody Mary and stuff like that.
Right,
so it's like, only imagine at that time period where people are just like, if somebody gets killed or somebody goes missing, it's Jack the Ripper here now. You know what I'm saying? Because it was the thing, it was the hot thing at the time. So it's really interesting that you say that all over the world, like, everybody knew about Jack the Ripper, and it does raise fear, and it does scare people.
And it goes
again, like, he was never caught.
Yeah,
it goes back to bad news travels fast.
Yeah.
That's what bad news sells. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just,
I will say that if Jack the Ripper was a thing in today's world, he would have been got caught.
That's what I'm saying. It was the perfect time.
Nah, he would have got. Hey, look.
There's plenty of people that get away with murder all the time.
Hey, look, they would have hopped on Twitter. They would have been like, "Hey, this is a picture of his hat." They would have found him like that.
Nah.
It's just I think, like I said, it was just the table was set for him. There was not a lot of resource in the world, Why not? I guess.
I agree.
And he was murdering prostitutes.
Yep.
So he's going to go up and offer, to be a customer. They're going to know the quiet, dark alleyways. And sometimes they even, when it was raining, they'd have sex under the stairwells in apartment buildings. So they know where they can go with a client and make some noise, and no one is going to complain or even. So it's like we're taking their killer
perfect spot.
To the perfect spot to be executed.
Yeah, and another thing with that is, like, even if like somebody was just walking by or something, they already know what's going down. So it's just like they're not even
mind your
paying
business
attention to what's going on.
Well, and that goes back to it. You're more likely to mind your business back then, because if that is like a politic, for example, or whatnot, he might look at you as a threat because you saw what he was doing. Yeah. And, it's just, that's how the world works, Corruption is corruption. So, and he just basically feasted on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Now, Bradley, I wanted to talk with you about your short comic that you had come out.
Yeah, I definitely want to bring that up too.
Damn right.
And like, because we're a nerd podcast, it's awesome that one of your stories was turned into a comic. From writing novels to having this happen. And I don't want to give too much away about this, but how did it feel to, do something like this?
Oh, it was a real, now just so I funded this myself. This is a vanity project from beginning to end, but I went to Full Sail, and a guy who's also a graduate, Wes Locker, he primarily writes for games. But I found out that he does also, on the side, helps produce comic books. So I thought, it would be a lot of fun to take this comic, this poem, and put it back in the Gothic era. It's an erotic vampire story. It's set to rhyme. And so he knew a guy from Romania who's a fantastic illustrator. And so he sent me some test panels, and I loved them. So I said, well, let's do this. So Wes did all the lettering, and this other guy did the illustrations. I paid someone else to do the coloring for the front, and then I used Kablam Comics, and they printed me out 100 of them, and I could go back and order more anytime I want. And it's something I figured this will help me to get into comic cons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go in and sell it for a couple bucks. And oh, by the way, I've got these novels, but if you just came in with
market yourself.
Yeah. So it's kind of a marketing thing, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and you guys are nerds, so I thought you might enjoy it.
I loved it.
Did I ever?
Yeah, it was a good story. Like, it's definitely because like I don't want to give too much away, but like when you read it and when you see what happens, you're just like, wow, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's and for it to be a short story too, like I feel like you get your money's worth when you read this thing. And as I would love to have a sequel to it. I don't know, how did you guys feel about it?
Come on.
Well, so and again, this has nothing to do with me liking it or not liking it. I don't want to see a sequel. What I want to see is more stuff like this, though, because even though Banks is calling it a short story, I don't look at it as a short story. It's a poem. It's a poem to me, and I've never seen a comic poem ever in my entire life.
Really?
So and again, it's coincidentally, we were just talking about black and white comics really don't exist over here.
Yeah, we were
anymore.
we wouldn't have said that if he had given us the damn comics. When
I was about to say now, unfortunately, Banks took 3 months to give us the damn comic, but coincidentally, we just did a podcast with another graphic novelist.
Yep.
And we got on the subject of black and white comics just don't exist over here because maybe just the market's not in it or whatever the case may be.
It's an American thing for real, because in America everything.
Well, no, that's what we're talking about over here in the West.
Everything's always in color over here, whereas in Japan it's black and white. But in Japan they always do like those special, well, not special, but like
they got the special editions where
not special editions where it's like, like sometimes they'll release a chapter and it's like the first two pages
or whatever.
Well, the final volume of Basculus is like that, where they have it's like every so many pages it'll be like in color. Yeah, and it's actually more like artwork of the characters, even the ones that had died up until then, because there's not a lot of people. Spoiler alert, there's not a lot of characters left. Bradley, just to bring you into Basculus real quick, it's essentially star-crossed lovers. It's based on Romeo and Juliet, but it's two ninja clans that are basically at war. The two that are supposed to take over the clans fall in love. And Romeo and Juliet, how it goes.
And when D put me onto that anime, I've never read the manga, but D put me onto the anime, and I absolutely binged it and fell in love because, again, I love Shakespeare, I love anime, and I love the twist on this. I love samurais and ninjas.
Yeah, I just love the way they integrated that, man.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Well, but I deliberately chose black and white because it's vampires. It's
right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I love it.
I just thought it set the right tone for the story.
Great choice.
Oh yeah.
And that's why we didn't get this recording wise, but after I read it, I immediately grabbed my Edgar Allan Poe book, and I was like, I'm telling you, this guy's in Edgar Allan Poe, because it had Edgar Allan Poe vibes all over it. It was such a Poe poem, if you will, and I absolutely really loved the comic. I read it twice.
When I was reading it, just to have those kind of the horror aspect to the story, it reminded me of Tales from the Crypt used to have comic books back in the day. And it was just that's where it just took my mind. I was like, this is so cool to be reading something that's not action based, and we got to say, it's a very good gear shift for me to be reading something at a different speed and pace from the typical, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment.
Man.
I like British movies because British movies don't have a very big budget.
Right.
So they have to have a really good story. They can't hide it. They can't hide a weak story with a lot of special effects and car chases. They have to tell a good story. And so I really like them. They're lean and they're just very, very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Right.
So thanks.
Do you have a BBC subscription?
I do.
Nice.
So now I wanted to move along to your next project that you're working on, the Yo-Yo Man. And I remember when you had put the post up on Facebook and we were talking about it, and I was just like, I would love to check it out so that way we could talk about it on this episode.
And coincidentally, we just talked about time travel too.
Exactly. We just talked about time travel too. So, without giving too much away, what was the thought process going into this story?
Well, I actually had this idea for this story 30 years ago. And on a whim, I wrote it down. I sent it to Analog, and it was absolutely terrible because I had no experience writing. My mother remarried to a guy who's a physicist, and now my son-in-law is a physicist. So although, I got through one semester of chemistry with an A and ran away as fast as I could before I had to take a second semester. I did take some physics as I was taking pre-med. So the theoretical physics and quantum mechanics interests me. I don't pretend to be an expert on it, but just how it works. And so I thought one day, I says, time. We talk about time. We talk about space, and who says that space and time are interrelated? I mean, all the like H.G. Wells, the Time Machine. When he flips the switch, he stays exactly the same spot on the Earth, and reappears all this time later. Yeah. I said, where is that written? So I kind of took that idea and played with it and came up with a story. That since I write detective stories anyway, I made it into a PI who was a failed physicist who had enough grasp of the concepts that he could work out what happened at this guy's death, so that he could get his client cleared. And that's how it happened.
Man, I loved it.
Yeah, well, I'll say, man, like I enjoyed the story, especially when it got towards the end. And I was telling, I believe it was Trav. I was telling them that when I was reading this story, because we talk on social media and whatnot, Brad. It's just like it felt like you were the character in the story. Trav, did you feel that way when you was reading it?
No, not necessarily.
B?
Yes,
he's like, I can see where you're coming from. It just depends on the type of writer, it just depends on the author. Sorry, it was you. I was talking to you about this, D. I'm sorry, Trav. Yeah, I knew you had spoke to me, but maybe you spoke to Trav. I mean, you're not, we're not exclusive,
Yeah.
Well, because I had this story bouncing around my head for 30 years, I can tell you I wrote the whole thing. It's 4,900 words. I wrote it in 4 hours.
Wow.
Holy cow.
I tweaked it like 3 times, and I said, that's it. I submitted it, and we'll see what happens. But It was fun to write.
Oh, yeah. It's fun to read.
No, it was, thank you for, allowing us to even read it, before it becomes privy to the public. I love how just intelligent you are, man. It's like
he's knowledgeable, bro.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, when am I? Who the hell else am I going to talk to who knows more about Jack the Ripper? You know what I'm saying? True. Like this is why you got to.
You got Michael, but
yeah. Yikes. Michael. Oh yeah, Brad helped us take a
knows who Michael is.
Yeah, he knows who Michael is.
How about Michael?
Hey, he thought Michael was you though.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
Thanks.
Now.
No. What are you talking about, Trav?
Oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, I don't. What are you talking
Here
about?
He is, Trav.
It'll have to be a conversation with Brad off air. I don't want to include the listeners then on that.
Yeah, because it's like
he's asleep over there, Trav.
I don't know what he's doing.
No, I'm saying because you saying that
it's been like that since the first sentence when he messed up.
No.
So
because you're saying like why would you say that Brad knows who Michael is?
where's your comic at?
It's in the room.
Where's your comic
it's
at?
in the room. Hey,
Exactly.
I can get
I'm in my
mine faster than
podcast room. My comic.
I'm
I'm in my
podcast.
podcast room. My comic is in my bedroom.
Yeah,
I keep all my comics in my bedroom.
Oh well, Brad. Since we basically covered all our bases with your writings, I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on Dick Tracy and things like that?
Well,
You're a lot older than us, so I can.
Oh, thanks.
Dang, B. Like you just had to put it out there like that.
What?
I was a faithful reader, follower of Dick Tracy as a kid. You know, and I remember that magic watch he had where he could talk.
Yeah.
He got
cell phones. You know,
well before the Power Rangers.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he beat him there.
If you ever saw the movie with Warren Beatty, you look at this color scheme. The cinematographer deliberately chose colors to look like it just come right. You stepped right off the pages of the comic strip. You know, the Sunday funnies. You know, they had those bright yellows and greens and blues, just like what you see in the illustrated comic strips. And I didn't catch it at the time, but later on I thought, oh wow, that is so cool.
Yeah. I was just curious. Did anybody else have a question? Thanks.
Go to Trav and come back to me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't even have a question at this point. I feel like we've covered it all.
Yeah.
I can't really.
Yeah.
I don't have
to think of something
any more questions about the books.
Yeah,
I got so many questions about life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's just not enough time, and we'll have to do some exclusive.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I got a question
Go ahead.
Because Brad, I saw this photo on I can't remember if it was Instagram or your Facebook, but it was a Star Trek photo. So, because we are a nerd podcast, like what are some of your favorite things in nerd culture?
Oh, I was a Trekkie when it came out the very first time. And, I cried when they discontinued that series. And, when it came back, I was just overjoyed. And when the Next Generation came out, I was initially very cynical. I said, oh, no, that's not my Star Trek. But I fell in love with the characters.
Talking about Next Generations?
Yeah, the Next Gen. Yeah,
I love Next Generations.
But see that, like, I remember there it was split in the middle with fans. Like there were some people who like. Well, I mean, it's just like us with Star Wars.
Not to me. I've never been a Star Wars
I think I like
hater.
them all.
Exactly. I like.
I can go back and watch those old movies,
I'm not one of those shriveled up old Star Wars fans who just be hating the hate, dude.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like there are some people who only like the original trilogy. Like they don't like anything.
Don't R. Kelly me. Yeah,
okay? I mean, all they did was make it look better. That's all they really did. I don't see a reason to hate those movies getting better.
But no, because you grew up with the original, but we grew up with the Next Generation.
Yeah, exactly.
And Picard. And Picard's guy.
It was just something about him being bald, man.
Dude,
come on.
No, for real.
No, for real. That's what I mean. It's like Patrick Stewart is the man.
Yeah.
Everything he's ever been.
Just call him Wills.
Will, exactly. When he was in the X-Men.
Wills.
Will.
The only thing about the Next Generation is they're always pulling their shirts down. You'd think by that time they'd figure out a uniform that worked for them.
I never even noticed that.
Oh yeah, they're always that shirt.
It's kind of like when the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air anniversary had came out, and when Will Smith he revealed that he was repeating the lines back to his co-stars when they were saying that same line, but it's just like you never noticed it until like he actually said something about it. So yeah, that's something I've never even noticed, and I loved the Next Generation when I was growing up.
Yeah. Of course, for the original Star Trek, you'd think they would have invented seatbelts by then too. You know,
there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
But hey, did anybody else have any other questions?
Nah, man.
Hey, I could do this. I could do this all day.
My question is, when can we have you back?
Yeah, there you go, Trav. That's the most important question.
When can we have you back?
Anytime before the end of August. After that, I'm going to be in Scotland. And we could try to do something then, but it'd have to be on a weekend because I'd probably have classes during the week, and it's a difference.
By then, I'm sure we'll all be vaccinated, and we can get together and we can throw a little Van Wilder, college party.
Where's it gonna be at?
Right
you mean
there.
Old school?
Okay. Can we all have pipes?
We'll bring the kegs over the.
Hey, can we all have pipes?
You can.
The
This
pipes.
dude, Trav, come. Hey, are you?
Hey,
tired,
hold on.
man?
No, because you know what it is? I'll bring the fine Irish whiskey.
All right.
Bradley knows what I'm talking about right
Yeah.
now.
I do.
I'll bring the fine Irish whiskey.
And Trev, so you would know why whiskey was invented then?
No.
So the Irish wouldn't take over the world.
Oh.
Hey, hey, and with that being
And
said,
with that-
Yeah, Bradley. I was about to say, man, he must be a killer to do bonfires and let him tell stories.
uh-huh,
Could you
tell the
imagine?
ghost stories and everything.
Oh man,
I'd be
Ah.
sitting there googly eyed.
yeah, man, that'd be amazing.
With the
Yep.
marshmallows, making s'mores.
S'mores. We did it
Uh-huh.
last night.
That hot cocoa?
Mhm. That hot cocoa.
Uh-huh. But hey, with that being said, Brad, thank you for joining us on the new episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Let everybody in social media land know where they can find Bradley Harper at.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Where they gonna find you at, Brad? Come on.
Oh,
You gotta hit him with the
I
sauce.
like that one. I like that one.
Yeah. So my website is www.bharperauthor.com. And you can find me on Amazon. I've got an author page on Amazon as well. And if you find Bradley Harper Author on Facebook, you can sign up for this newsletter, or also on my website. I do one newsletter a month because I'm lazy, and you don't want to hear from, and you don't want to hear from me that often anyway. And I talk about my books. I talk about projects I'm working on. And, right now, the first book, A Knife in the Fog, is being pitched in Hollywood.
Nice.
Fell in love with it, and he's trying to get a TV series deal. And my agency is reaching out to Emma Watson from, the
right.
Harry Potter movies.
Hell
we know
yeah.
her. Hey,
What?
now-
to read the book and put her, her stamp of approval on the project, saying she would go with it if it was offered to her.
see, now I'm Bradley's boy, so I was already privy to that information.
Ah, okay.
Just to let y'all know.
Oh,
All right.
okay. All right, Trav. I mean, me and you been riding together, so yeah. All right, I like that. I like that.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will.
Well, we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah,
I know,
man.
Yeah.
I know that if it gets put into the right hands, it'll be something special.
Thank
Yep.
you very much.
We'll talk
And,
with our people, Brad.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll reach out for you.
We'll reach out the wheels. Let them know.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Take
Yep.
care.
Hey, thank you again for joining us. D, let them know where they can find you at in social media land.
That's going to be rebellious _D23 at Instagram.com. Trav?
And you can find me on Instagram at ZK Audio. And where's that Banks train going to be found at?
You can find me, your hero, Benjamin Banks at KingBenji_Banks on Twitter and Instagram. And you can look me up on Facebook at Benjamin Banks. I should be the first person to pop up. If not, then I need to contact Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you again for watching and listening to a brand new episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And we'll see you next time. Always keep that pinky up. Peace.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, Brad. Thanks again, man.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. Podcast, we got that too. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for further episodes and notifications. Thanks a lot to our patrons. And if you don't mind, join the Patreon. We'll be having new specials coming up soon.